Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. Now, this is from that great big pile that got lost for 5 years. So this is from a ham who lives in Michigan, and he wants to talk to a friend who is near Reno, Nevada, okay, and wants to know what band, he would use to do that. Well, you know, this is a question I get asked a lot by people who are just starting to learn about ham radio. How can I pick a frequency where I can always talk to my friends? The answer is, frankly, you can't, because the ionospheric propagation, the ionosphere, upon which we depend to reflect those radio waves back down to the ground, technically refract, not reflect, but it changes all the time. It is very much beholden to the sunspot cycle, which is an 11-year cycle, and we're sliding down off the peak of the most recent one. Now, there are propagation pieces of software that can help you determine what would be a good frequency for a certain time of day. And then you set up a schedule, I don't know, by email, whatever you want to do to set this thing up. But this guy wanted to use a radio that he was given, and that radio is a Kenwood TS-520. That's this radio here. This radio was available in the mid-1970s. It's Kenwood. Okay, Kenwood was at that time best known for building audio equipment that was imported into the United States, but they also had a sideline where they made amateur radio transceivers. The TS-520 from the mid-70s is the radio all my friends had, but not me. I couldn't afford it. It was about $100 too expensive. I only had about $600. This thing was on the $700 range with tax and all that. And so I got a Yaesu FT201. The big Yaesu transceiver at the time was the 101. I now have one. I certainly couldn't afford it then. Anyway, this radio actually sits about this high. It's pretty good size. And note here that it will tune to the nearest kilohertz. That's it, and it's got an analog dial. So you have to calibrate the dial every so often by putting this knob function over here to the 25 kilohertz, where it would put out a signal every 25 kilohertz from a, quote, marker generator, and you could adjust this to 0 beat so that at the 0, 25, 50, 75 points, you would just zero in that particular marker. It would operate on 160, 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters. It could do CW, upper sideband, and lower sideband. And note that these were not determined automatically by band. You had some switches here, and on the Yaesu, you could turn the heaters off so that you could just listen if you wanted to. This was a hybrid radio. It was all transistor except for the driver and 2 finals. Okay? Now, that meant lots of extra knobs. You had receiver incremental tuning here, which could be turned on and off. Here's your AF gain and RF gain. The AF gain is the middle knob. The RF gain is the outer one. Normally, you see it here, it's turned up to max. Under certain signal conditions of really strong signals, you can back off on that, but normally it runs at max. Now, these had to be tuned. Here's your load and your fixed channel, okay? If these were fixed channels, you could put them in here. Otherwise, you had to tune that. And here is the plate tuning. Note it said 3.57 and on up would give you a good starting place. You'd start with low drive. You'd put the thing in tune. Okay, so you're actually transmitting over the air. And then you fiddle these. You've got automatic level control, the current through the plate. And what you would do is you tune this to dip the current, and then you're tuned, and then you can push the drive up. These things would actually put out about 150 watts. They were pretty remarkable radios. And this radio was so popular that to this day there's a Kenwood line of all of the derivatives of this radio. Of course, now they're all transistor. They'll tune down to the nearest hertz as opposed to kilohertz and so on. They're just fantastic radios. I've always wanted one. I see them when I go to swap fests, but I can't tell if it's one that'll just work or if it's something I'm going to have to do a bunch of restoration on. So anyway, I wanted to tell you about this radio because it was so cool. This was the Cat's Meow when I graduated from college in 1975. And I couldn't afford the Cat's Meow, so I had to buy a kitten. I bought the Yaesu FT201, which was only imported into the U.S. for about 2 years. Now, let's turn over here to VOACAP. Here we're going to go to VOACAP.com. It was originally developed by VOA and is now available. It is used extensively. They get it for ham radio, marine HF, 11 meters, and for shortwave listeners. Let's take this one right here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is set the grid square of the guy who asked the question, Gordon, and he is in Echo November, so we'll put EN 35 KI. And then I'm going to put my grid square in here, which is DM68CG. You can see right here, it just shows the distance between Minnesota and me. Okay, now we're going to go over here, and we're going to go to single sideband. Okay, we're going to go to 100 watts, not 1500 watts. Okay, and we're going to look at the propagation chart. Okay, now what this will tell us is given current propagation parameters. This is the time of day in UTC. These are the different bands. Okay, and what we are interested in, see, this is 80 meters, this color. 17 meters is not going to do us much good, so we can actually turn that off. 15 we can turn off, 12 we can turn, well, actually I'm going to leave 15 on. Okay, 11 and 10 off. Okay, 80 meters would be during the night. So this tells us the 20 meter signal that isn't much during the night, but during the daytime here. Right now it's 6:10 p.m. and it's 0100 UTC. Okay, and so this right here is in local afternoon. And we can look at this and see what frequencies might be the rest. There's certain times a day when you have 100% probability that 20 meters is going to be open, a 95% probability for 30 meters, 79% probability for 15, and 75 for 40. You can go up here at different times of the day, like right in here, which is in the evening, which is what we are right now. 40 meters would be a good propagation band. Okay, now we can go up here and see 60 meters would also be good, and during the evening 80 meters would be good. So you can see from this, now these are probabilities, okay, probabilities. These are 10 meter, 12 meter, 15 meter. This is the clock coming around here. Red is nearly 100% probability that you'll have some form of connection, and it tells you the band, 80 meters, 60, 40, 30, 20, and then probably nothing out here. Now, during the afternoon, local afternoon, you can get some up here in 12 meters. There's even a little window on 20 meters, but notice the light blue. That's less than 10% probability. So that's how you read these charts. So the question is, if you like to, say you want to talk to your father or your uncle, or you're halfway across the country on temporary duty travel or something like that, how to find a frequency that would probably be good to where you could talk in between. You do that by band. Of course, you have to have an antenna for it, and you get somewhat different propagation for a horizontal dipole versus a vertical, but this gives you a place to start. 40 meters is a great all-round band for this sort of stuff over these kinds of distances. This isn't all the way across the U.S. It's from the west to the upper Midwest, okay? So, VOACAP, VOACAP.com. Now, it's also a piece of software that you can download if you want. And then, but you'll have to put in the latest propagation parameters, which you can get on the internet, that will help the program figure out what the probabilities are. Now, when it says 100% probability, I'm going to say, all things considered, that's probably about a 10% probability it won't work. You know, these things say, man, guaranteed. Well, nothing's guaranteed. But one of the nice things about ham radio is that we have all of these different bands to choose from for high frequency. Okay? Now, if you're a tech and you want to talk to somebody halfway across the country, look at DMR, or look at D-Star, or Fusion, which is Yaesu's, Kenwood's, and ICOM's there that they can do. Kenwood and ICOM both use D-Star. All the Chinese radios are DMR. And Yaesu uses this system Fusion, which connects both analog. What they do is they bring people together in a big party line. Okay? Now there's a whole bunch of what are called rooms or different party lines or whatever that you can go into. You can even have assigned an address just to yourself so that you can do across the country, the backbone is the internet, and talk to each other very regularly that way. So you see there's opportunities even for the technicians. If all you have is an FM handheld, there are still maybe some things you can do with linked repeaters, but they get a little bit hard. So anyway, there you go. Lots of options, lots of opportunities. And thank you for reminding me of the radio I could never have. Until we next meet, 73.